The courtroom was silent. My father stood confidently in front of the judge and said, "Those 3 vacation homes in the Florida Keys belong to my family." He sounded proud, certain, untouchable. Everyone in the room believed him. After all, he was a powerful businessman, and I was just his daughter. But what he didn't know was that inside my bag, I had one piece of evidence that could destroy everything he just said. Because the truth was simple. Those homes were never his. And in a few minutes, the entire courtroom was about to find out. My name is Olivia Harper. I'm 29 years old. And 3 years ago, I stopped speaking to my father. To the outside world, Richard Harper was a respected real estate developer in Miami. He owned luxury apartments, office towers, and several vacation properties in the Florida Keys. But the man people admired in public was very different behind closed doors. Growing up, my father believed one thing above all else. Money meant power, and power meant control. He controlled the family business. He controlled my mother. And he expected to control me too. My older brother happily followed his path. But I never did. I studied property law instead. And the more I learned about real estate, the more I started noticing something strange about my father's business. The 3 vacation homes in the Florida Keys were my father's pride. Every holiday he bragged about them. Luxury beachfront houses, private docks, million-dollar views. But legally, something didn't add up. Because according to the property records I found during my studies, those houses weren't actually registered under my father's company. They were registered under someone else. My late grandmother. My grandmother Margaret Harper was the kindest person I knew. Unlike my father, she didn't care about status. She cared about fairness. Years before she passed away, she quietly purchased those 3 homes. But she never told my father the full truth. Instead, she told me, 6 months before she died, my grandmother called me to her house. She handed me a sealed envelope. "Keep this safe," she said. "What is it?" I asked. "My will." She smiled gently. "One day you might need it." At the time, I didn't understand why she trusted me with something so important. But later, everything made sense. After my grandmother passed away, my father acted quickly. He told the family that the 3 Florida Keys homes now belonged to him. My brother believed him. My mother believed him. Everyone believed him. Except me. Because I had read the will. And the truth inside that envelope was shocking. According to my grandmother's will, the 3 Florida Keys homes were not left to my father. They were left to me. Not jointly. Not partially. Completely. My grandmother knew exactly how my father behaved. And she didn't trust him with the properties. But when I confronted him about it, everything exploded. The night I told my father about the will, he laughed. "You don't understand how business works," he said. "Those homes are part of my company now." "That's illegal," I replied. His smile disappeared. Then he said something cold. "If you try to challenge me, you'll regret it." That was the night I moved out of the family house. At first, I didn't want to fight him. He was still my father. But months later, I discovered something worse. He had already started selling one of the homes. That's when I realized I had no choice. I hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit to stop the sale. My father responded immediately. With a team of expensive attorneys, the trial began almost a year later. My father arrived confidently. Expensive suit. High-profile lawyers. Media attention. To everyone watching, it looked like an easy victory for him. Because he claimed the homes were purchased through his company years ago. But he didn't know about one detail. The document my grandmother gave me. the one still sitting quietly inside my bag. And in just a few minutes, that document was about to change everything, as my father stood in the courtroom saying, "Those Florida Keys homes are ours." My lawyer slowly stood up. Then he turned to the judge and said, "Your Honor, we would like to submit new evidence." My father smiled confidently until he saw what I placed on the table: my grandmother's original signed will. And suddenly, his confidence disappeared. The courtroom became quiet as my lawyer placed the document on the judge's desk. My father was still smiling confidently. He leaned toward his attorney and whispered something, clearly convinced that whatever we had brought forward wouldn't matter. But when the judge opened the envelope, everything changed. Inside was my grandmother's original signed will. Not a copy, not a digital version. The official, notarized document with witnesses and legal verification. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading. At first, my father didn't react. He stood with his arms crossed, looking completely relaxed. But as the judge continued reading, my father's lawyer slowly leaned closer to him. Then he whispered something urgently. That's when my father's smile disappeared, because the will clearly stated something very specific. The 3 vacation homes in the Florida Keys were left entirely to Olivia Harper. Me. Not to my father. Not to the company. Not to anyone else. The judge looked up from the document. "Mr. Harper," he said calmly, "according to this will, the properties belong to your daughter." The room murmured. My father quickly stepped forward. "That document is being misunderstood." His lawyer immediately stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. The properties were later transferred to my client's real estate company." The judge nodded slowly. "Do you have proof of that transfer?" My father's legal team exchanged uneasy looks. Because they didn't, my lawyer stood again. "Your Honor, there's more." He handed another file to the judge. Inside were property records, bank statements, and a timeline showing something important. The homes had never been legally transferred to my father's company. They were still registered under my grandmother's estate. And legally, that estate passed to me. My father had simply claimed the homes publicly. But legally, they were never his. Whispers filled the courtroom. Reporters scribbled notes. Even the judge looked surprised. My father's lawyer tried one last argument. "This is a family misunderstanding." But the judge's expression hardened. A misunderstanding does not allow someone to sell property they do not own. Then he turned to my father. "Mr. Harper, did you attempt to sell one of these homes earlier this year?" My father hesitated. That hesitation said everything. The judge reviewed the documents again. Then he delivered the decision. The court recognizes Olivia Harper as the legal owner of the 3 Florida Keys properties. A quiet gasp spread across the room. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, any attempted sale of those properties by Mr. Harper is legally invalid. My father stared at the floor. The man who had walked into court with complete confidence had just lost everything. When the hearing ended, people slowly began leaving the courtroom. My father remained standing near the table. For a moment, he didn't look like the powerful businessman everyone feared. He looked like a man who had just realized his control was gone. As I walked past him, he finally spoke. "You planned this." I stopped. "No," I said quietly. "Grandma did." My grandmother had known exactly how my father behaved. She had watched him manipulate people for years. That's why she left the homes to me. Not because I was her favorite, but because she believed I would protect them. And she was right. Weeks later, the legal paperwork was finalized. The 3 luxury homes in the Florida Keys officially became mine. Ocean views, private docks, $1 million properties. But the most valuable thing I gained wasn't the houses. It was independence. Because for the first time in my life, my father no longer had control over me. A month after the trial, my father called me. His voice sounded different. Quieter. "I never thought you fight me," he said. I replied calmly. "You never thought I'd stand up for myself." There was a long silence. Then he said something surprising. "You're stronger than I thought." Maybe it was the closest thing to respect he had ever given me. A few months later, I visited one of the Florida Keys homes. The ocean stretched endlessly across the horizon. I sat on the balcony and thought about my grandmother. She knew exactly what she was doing when she wrote that will. She didn't just give me 3 homes. She gave me the power to stand up to the man who believed he owned everything. And as the sun disappeared over the water, I realized something important. My father walked into that courtroom believing those homes were his. But the truth had been waiting quietly all along. And sometimes, one piece of evidence is enough to change everything.